class is in session. This is your host Luis, and today we're going to take a look at this mono green Ginyu deck. Again, friends, thank you guys so much for being with us today. We don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this video. We want to try to run through it as fast as we can, but I don't want to make it seem like I'm being rushed either. I do want to preface this. This is the updated version. I have posted a Ginyu deck profile before, but it wasn't in real life, and this is in real life, and it's a little bit more updated. This deck is pretty good, pretty oppressive, and it's really good. I think personally it's really good. It replenishes itself really quickly if your opponent has a lot of field control and stuff like that. Matter of fact, it struggles a little bit if your opponent doesn't deal damage to your board. So you kind of want your opponent to do a little something to it if possible. It will struggle against control because your cards will be on board a lot, so that's something that you might want to be aware of. But you don't use a lot of energy, which is really nice, which allows you to use your energy for other things, and we'll take a look at some of those things that we do. Jumping right into it, for those of you guys that don't know what the Ginyu leader does, he has the same auto in the front that he does on the back. He's a 10k base on the front, 15k on the back. When he swings, you're allowed to reveal the top card of your deck. Once you reveal that card, if it's a Ginyu Force card that's green with an energy cost of 2, you're able to play it. Alright, it has to be green, it has to be energy cost of 2, and you're able to play it completely for free. And then you're able to draw a card. You're going to run into some scenarios where you don't see a Ginyu when you reveal it, a Ginyu Force card. So what you do is, when you reveal that card, you shuffle it back into the deck and then just draw a card. There's no big deal. He has 2 ways to awaken. The first one is pretty generic, when his life is at 4 or less, and the other one is if you have 4 or more Ginyu Force battle cards on board. So it has to be battle cards. It doesn't include himself or a unison. It has to be a Ginyu Force card. Any Ginyu Force card, any color. You flip this guy over, and then you're able to draw 2 cards. Taking a look at his backside here, same auto, same ability. The only difference here is that he has an activate battle and is once per turn, either on offense or defense. He's allowed to give any Ginyu Force member on the board an extra 10k for the battle. Doesn't include him or unisons, it only includes the battle cards. Alright, we're going to move this guy out of the way, and we're going to take a look really quickly at the 4 Ginyu Force members that we're playing. We're going to be playing 4 Goldo. Alright, this is one of the very few decks that allows you to manipulate what you're going to draw. Alright, so this is what makes the deck so good. You know exactly what's coming up next, and you're able to just make your strategy before you even have cards in your hand. And that's what makes this deck really dangerous. So Goldo right here, he's one of those catalysts that allows you to see what you're going to draw next. He has 2 separate abilities. One is in hand. So if you pitch this guy from your hand, you're able to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them on top and or bottom in any order that you want. So typically that means you have to put all 3 at the bottom or all 3 on the top. For this deck specifically, that's not how it works. You're able to put as many cards as you want on the bottom and as many cards as you want on top in any order that you want. His second ability only works while he's on board, and again, he's played for free off your leader's ability. Once per turn, you're able to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and rearrange them in any order that you want on top and or bottom. The next guy that does something really similar is our friend Jace here. He's honestly my favorite member of the Ginyu Force. Jace, what he does is that when he swings, he's able to look at the top 3 cards of the deck and rearrange them in any order that he wants. But he can also add any Ginyu Force card to his hand, regardless of color, regardless of skill, regardless of energy cost. You can add anything that you want. So this guy's really similar to the Turles in AOD. Another catalyst, so that you can see what's going to be up next, is your Birder. Birder is a blocker that restands at the end of the turn and allows you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them on top or bottom in any order that you want as well. Finally, we are playing 3 Raccoon, the Musclehead. I think he's one of the better cards in the deck, but I had to cut him down just because he doesn't let me rearrange as much as the other guys do. And I keep the deck very tight knit at a close 50 so that we can see all our cards as best as we possibly can. You're not going to struggle with draw power here in this deck, but you will early on, so it's going to be really hard for you to pitch for your dormants and stuff like that, or anything that you need to do, especially if your opponent just starts swinging at your board. It's going to be difficult because you're not taking any life, but that doesn't mean that you can't awaken. Thanks to Raccoon right here, you're able to awaken pretty early. Now I'm about to show you guys a different card here in a second. But before I move on, there's something that you need to know about every single one of these guys that I just showed you. All of them have unique, so it means you can only have one on board. Well, it means you can only play one on board. That does not mean that you can't have more than one. It just means that you as a person can only play one. All right. So there are going to be some scenarios, and I kind of want to show you guys what that looks like here in a second. There are going to be some scenarios where you have your one Raccoon on board, right? And let's say you swing with Raccoon and your opponent hits it with the Mafuba. Mafuba jar will make him as if he doesn't exist anymore. He's just a plain old battle card. Now this card doesn't have unique anymore. He doesn't even have the name Raccoon the Musclehead. So because that Mafuba is on top, you are allowed to play another Raccoon, because the unique states that you are only allowed to play one. Doesn't mean that you can't have more than one. Now, obviously, because you have one face up that he has unique, you're not able to play another one. You got to make sure that this guy just doesn't exist. Here's the thing. If your opponent negates the unique skill on this card, the card that you want to play does have unique. That's why Mafuba is the only one that's only going to be able to allow you to be able to play more than one. Alright, we're going to take a look at another Ginyu Force that's very similar. This one is all 4 members of the Ginyu Force. This is Ginyu Force the Showstoppers. We're playing 4 of these. This guy is also a huge catalyst for your turn 2 awaken if possible. Alright, this guy does not have unique, which is why we run him at 4. If we could run him at 6, we would too. You can play this guy over and over again. So when this guy swings and he deals a damage to either the Unison or your leader, or your opponent's leader, sorry, you're able to play another Ginyu Force with an energy cost of 2 from your deck, except for himself. So if you're missing one member, you're able to play him for free from the deck. And again, you've played all these cards for free off your leader skill or off a Raccoon skill. You've played all these cards for free. You haven't tapped any energy. That does not mean that you can't tap any energy, but more oftentimes than not, you just don't have to tap any type of energy. The reason why this guy is extremely important is because it allows the deck to do what it's supposed to do before this card came out. The next card I'm about to show you pairs really well with this, because again, this card counts as a birder, Gildo, Raccoon. It counts as all 4 members of the Ginyu Force while he's on board or in your hand or in the drop or the warp, anywhere. Alright, so this guy pairs really well with this Ginyu backbone of the Force. Now this card is really important because it allows you to play himself for free as long as you have all members of the Ginyu Force on board. And you see it pairs really well with this one because he counts as all members. Before this card came out, it was really hard to get this card out on the board, so a lot of people didn't even play it, because it's really hard to get Ginyu Backbone of the Force on board because you have to have all 4 members on board. And since they have unique, it was really difficult to play more than one or have multiples of the same card. And your opponent would just get rid of one so that you couldn't pull this off. But now that Ginyu Force Showstoppers is on board, you don't even have to have the rest of the Ginyu Force cards on board in order to play Ginyu Force Backbone of the Force. Ginyu Backbone of the Force. So Backbone, he's really nice because when he's played, it gives you the option to swap with any card on your opponent's side of the field, and then you get to keep that card. Now that's your card, and they get this 4 drop energy, 4 energy cost Ginyu with only 15k power. So while they can swing with it, they're most likely going to combo it away or whatever. Now, the good thing about that's an option. So let's say you have 2 other members of the Ginyu Force and you play this off your leader skill. You swing with this and your opponent does not allow you to deal damage with him. So if your opponent's smart, they're not going to let you deal damage with him. So now you're stuck with 3 members of the Ginyu Force on board, or 3 Ginyu Force battle cards on board. You can just play this guy from your hand for free, not activate a skill, just don't swap with anything on your opponent's side. Now you have 4 different Ginyu Force cards on board and you're able to awaken. Alright, so finally we're going to look at one more Ginyu card that we're going to play. We're only going to be playing 2 of them. This is Ginyu the Body Snatcher. Alright, so this deck just is really cohesive, it's very consistent, and this is what I appreciate. Consistency is the name of my game. Alright, so if I try not to play a lot of 1-ofs, 2-ofs in any deck because I feel like I don't see it, especially if the card is a major import. But Ginyu, it can be a little difficult to resolve, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible. So basically, the way that this guy comes out is that you blow up a card that you've taken control of. So if you were able to play Meki in this deck somehow and you just took control of something, you're able to just blow it up and then play this card. This guy has inherent double strike and he's a 20k base. And when he hits the board, he gives himself, along with the rest of the Ginyu Force cards on the board, an extra 10k power. So he's a 30k double striker on board, and when you swing with him, your leader gets to tap that 1 energy and gives him an extra 10k, and he's a 40k double striker. The only downside to this gentleman right here is that during your opponent's turn, he gets a minus 10k power boost, okay? So it's a negative power boost. So he ends up being a 10k during your opponent's turn. So if your opponent manages to survive somehow, he's able to just easily wipe this guy off the board. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about Backbone and Body Snatcher here. Body Snatcher says that you're only allowed to play him once per turn, alright? So the turn you play him, you can't play him again. Body Snatcher doesn't say that. Backbone does, Body Snatcher does not. So if you take control of a card to your opponent's side of the board and you keep that card, the next turn you're able to do that again with Ginyu, Backbone of the Force, take over a second card. That same turn, if you have 2 of these in hand, you're able to blow up 1 card, play this guy, gives himself and 10k to the rest of the board, and then kill another one, play this guy, gives himself 10k, and again another 10k here, and then the rest of the board. And that's something that you guys are able to do. Next, we're going to take a look at the unison lineup that we're running here. Demigra is a great unison, so don't hear me say that it is not a great unison, but it's not the unison that we play in this deck. Alright, so a lot of times we're going to just charge and pass turn 1. If you go second, charge, swing for luck, and hopefully you get something. But we're going to be playing 4 SS Vegito, Peerless Warrior. We're going to be playing 2 Vegeta Resolute Agent of Destruction. I play AOD, so this card has been a huge favorite of mine. I really appreciate it. But I only run 2 of them in the deck. And the reason why we're able to run 2 of them in the deck is because you don't use a lot of energy. But first, we're going to take a look at this Vegito Unison right here. He has an auto once per turn. Whenever you play a card by using some sort of union skill, you're able to draw a card. You don't do that in this deck, so you don't have to worry about it. The reason he's here is for his +2 ability and his -7 ability. He's a 15k base, so it's kind of easy for your opponent to swing into him, but he recurs 2 markers per turn, which makes it really hard for it to be kicked off the board. Now, the new Secret Supreme Kai is really easily can take this off the board. But it recurs so many markers so quickly that you're able to resolve both of your abilities. The first one, you give it 2 markers, and it gives all your mono green battle cards on board, and gives them revenge. Alright, and that's awesome because it discourages your opponent to swing at Goldo with battle cards or anything like that, and it also gives your blocker Birder, it gives him revenge, and that's really helpful. So you just get rid of pesky things on your opponent's side of the board by killing things. The reason why green is one of my favorites is because it has inherent removal. We'll take a look at some of those cards here in a second. The -7 on this card is that if you remove 7 markers off of this card right here, you're able to look at your opponent's life, put any card in there into the drop area, and then your opponent has to pitch 3 cards from their hands. Now, this is typically a game ender. You'll just swing and pressure until your opponent has 1 life, and then you'll hit him with this Vegito Peerless Warrior. And because he recurs a lot of markers, he's going to be able to stay on board very easily. And because of Dormant Potential, he's going to be able to stay on board, and your opponent's just not going to be able to whittle him down to 2 or 3 markers. He's going to recur those markers, keep those markers, and he's going to be dangerous. Let's say your opponent, by some sort of miracle, Jesus comes down from heaven and takes this card off board. You're able to play this card right here. Okay, this card right here is really nice. When it hits the board, if you pitch a card out of your hand, you're able to wipe your opponent's entire board for free. You just kill everything, as long as, even barrier. It gets rid of barrier, it gets rid of anything, wipes their entire board, and that's just really nice. Just a nuke right there. Secondly, this guy has inherent double strike and critical with a 20k base. His +1 gives him an extra 5k for the turn, so he swings 25k double strike to Unison's leader, whatever you wanted to swing at. And then he has a -5 that you're able to resolve immediately in the next turn if your opponent didn't take any markers off of it. Forces your opponent to pitch 3 cards out of their hand, and it's just really helpful, really valuable. All right, really quickly, we're gonna take a look at the next few cards we're gonna play in this deck. Frieza Charismatic Villain. I think that's a bit obvious. You have Unisons on board with 2 or more markers. It kills anything on your opponent's side of the board. We're going to be playing these generic super combos right here. We're going to play 1/8. Okay. Now this isn't vital to the deck, which is the reason why I only play 1, but it's good. The draw 2 just helpful, especially early on in the game. And since you don't play your cards using your energy, you got energy up, so might as well use it. And we're going to be playing 2 Master Roshi just to recur those dormant potentials, and I'm going to show you guys here in a second. For our negates, we're going to be playing 3 Shocking Death Ball. Inherent field destruction, just kills anything on your opponent's side of the board. I do want you guys to recognize that BMS is a danger and a detriment to this deck, all right? You don't want to pitch a lot of cards out of your hand, but BMS will make that an option for you. So in order for you not to pitch all these cards out of your hand, if your opponent plays a BMS or anything with energy cost of 2 or less that's just really obnoxious, Shocking Death Ball is a huge option for that, as well as Charismatic Villain, and as well as Dormant Potential Unleashed. I understand that this is a little expensive, which is why there is a green-yellow variant in which you can play yourself those Flying Nimbuses. But this is much more valuable. So I recommend that if you can just scratch up some money and get 2 of them, that is just vital. And then because of Roshi, you're able to recur them and use them over and over again. So we keep the deck at a net 50 so that we can see this card. Okay, this card is what's keeping not only yourself alive, but your Unison alive. You will have people like me that will swing into the Unison until it dies. I don't care about your Unison. I honestly don't care too much about my opponent while I'm playing against him. I think we can be really good friends after the match, but until the match is over, I'm going to do everything that I can to stop him from killing me. So Dormant Potential Unleashed, really good, just generic green negate that everybody needs, and I'm sure they're going to reprint it in the future. So if you just want to wait for the reprint, wait for the reprint. You can activate this counter skill for free from your hand if you have a Unison on board, just a green Unison on board with 1 marker or more. So you don't negate the initial attack, which is the only card's downside. That's the only downside. Then you're able to kill any cards on your opponent's side of the board as long as the total of those cards is an energy cost of 2. So if your opponent pops 2 BMS on board, you can kill them both. And finally, if you pitch a card, it's an option to pitch this card. It has to be a green card that you pitch, this is why Roshi is just really good. If you pitch a green card from your hand, your opponent only has 1 more swing that turn. Keeps your Unison alive, it keeps you alive more than anything else. Finally, we had space for 2 more cards in the deck, and I went with Tapion, Fate of a Hero. Alright, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these other things that you can play in the deck if you decide not to play this card. This card is really inexpensive, and it's a really good generic green card. It's also a good generic blue card. So for 1 blue or green energy, you can take this card in your hand and pitch it. Send it to the drop area, and then it allows you to draw. Alright, at the end of the turn, this guy comes on board. He has Inherent Blocker, which is really good. The only bit of a downside that you have here is because he's not mono green, he's not going to gain revenge off your Unison. And finally, even if he could gain revenge off your Unison, he's not played until the end of the turn, so your Unison can't give it revenge. The reason why this works so well in this deck is because you know what you're going to draw next, so you can just stack your cards on top of your deck in any order that you need to, tap that energy and just pop this guy on board and then draw that card that you really need. Again, I play it more for defense, and just because it's draw power, it's a free draw once per turn. If I could play 4, I would. It's a bit of an optimal turn 1 play, honestly, but then that messes with the rest of the deck. Now, if you're looking for other options to play in the deck, like a Beggar Beater, you definitely can play this Prince of Destruction Vegeta Prideful Warrior. This is a beautiful card, best artwork. Personally, I think is the best artwork in the entire game. You can get the SR for cents at this point. This is a servant card, so it comes on board with 30k power, and it has deflect, so it's going to hit the board. And because you don't use your energy, you can tap 4 energy to put this guy on board. He's a 30k base with triple strike. Now the only downside here is that this guy will not restand at the beginning of your next turn, but that's okay. He's here to end the game for you if you need to. So this is a good thing you can swap out with Tapion. The other upside of this card is that he removes 3 markers from your opponent's Unison. It's really helpful. If you rather have something that's free with a double strike critical, this Sengoku Man on a Mission is really helpful. You can also put Secret Identity Mass Saiyan in here to do a little bit more board removal. I didn't think that I needed that because the deck has inherent board removal. But this guy is a good finisher. The reason I don't main him is because it messes with the color count. A lot of the times I'll draw him early, and I'll have a Dormant and 2 other green cards and this guy. And I don't want to pitch the other 2 green cards, and I can't pitch him because he's not green off of Dormant. Finally, another good tech. This card is being slept on. It's not being used. The majority, for some reason, feel like they don't even know that this exists or choose to ignore the fact that it exists. Blue Impulse. I do cite it in. for any matchup that likes to flood the board or play anything during my turn. So this is good against King Piccolo. This is good against all sorts of decks that have those hand trap counter plays, but they play something during their turn. It's also really good against Control, because Control takes my turn as their turn. They don't take their turn. They don't do anything during their turn. They do everything during my own turn. Blue Impulse wipes your opponent's entire board. It doesn't ignore barrier, but it does wipe their board. And the majority of stuff that your opponent is playing during your turn does not have barrier. So they're just flooding the board with these apes, or flooding the board with all these cards and blockers. Well, you just kill them all during your own turn. You tap 1 energy for him. He typically costs 2, but if you have a Unison on board, you can tap 1 energy and activate Blue Impulse. And those are some good options that you're able to play. But I went with Tapion for a little bit more defense, just in case I don't see Dormant. And finally, we do have a beater in the deck. We do have an ultimate, something that can end the game for us. By turn 3, if it's possible, I want to end the game by turn 3, but I also recognize that that's not always an option. So right here, the Majin Buu, Incarnation of Demonic Evil, such a great card. Great card. That doesn't mean that you have to play him. If you want to play this Kai, you're more than welcome to play the Kai Secret. This is really good for Unison removals. Really good for Unison removals. So I recommend that you guys get this card for any deck. But this works really well in green, or if you have the Shroom and Salsa leader. So this gentleman right here is a counter, but it only negates counter attacks. It doesn't negate every counter in the game, which is a little bit of a downside. And you can only activate this if your leader is the one that's not in battle. Okay, so if your Unison or your battle cards are swinging, then you can activate this guy. But if your leader is the one that swings and your opponent pops a Nimbus on board, then that you can't negate that because your leader swung. Now this is really good because you're going for game turn 3, turn 4, whatever turn it is, and your opponent tries to negate with a Sparking Negate, or tries to negate with the Flying Nimbus, or even a Dormant Potential, and you can just negate that counter skill. You can play this guy on board and he's an extra 40k double striker. Now the reason you can play him turn 3 is because if all your energy is green or your leader is mono green, basically he reduces his energy cost by 7 and he comes on the board for 3 energy. If your leader is a Shroom and Salsa or just a Demon Realm race or whatever it is, you remove his specific energy cost, so he comes on the board for 3 black energy or red energy, whatever energy you want him to come on board with. It's really helpful. Now I do want to preface this by saying that Dormant Potential, Flying Nimbus, Protector of the People, any card that requires an extra cost, even Topo, your opponent has to pay that cost before you counter it, okay? So if your opponent pops a Nimbus and he knows you have this in hand, wait for them to activate just wait for them to resolve the effect. So if they pop a Nimbus on you, they hit you with this Flying Nimbus, you ask them the question, are you going to pay cost so that I don't have to swing, so I can't swing anymore? If they say no, then you hit them with this guy. If they say yes, then you hit them with this guy. But you have to wait for them to resolve the effect in order for you to negate the whole thing. Because if not, your opponent's going to activate Flying Nimbus. You're going to respond with this way too quickly, and then your opponent didn't pitch that extra card out of their hand. Okay, and they could just save it for another Nimbus or something like that the next swing, or anything like that. So you just kind of egg your opponent on and ask them, hey, are you going to pay that cost? Are you going to pitch that card? Yes or no? And boom, negate the whole thing, and they had to get rid of that extra card in their hand. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching this deck profile. Let me know if you guys appreciate it or not. If there's any changes that you would do, anything that you think would be better. We're hopefully playing this in a tournament soon, and if you guys want to see gameplay, you let us know. Also, let me know down in the comments who's your favorite Ginyu Force character. Like I mentioned before, Jace is my favorite. Mostly because I didn't think he was as cocky as the rest of them, but I could be wrong. I haven't seen the show in a really, really long time. Thank you guys again for watching. We appreciate you guys always, and we're praying for you guys always. Bye.